Call to order this meeting of the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission for December the 9th, 2021. We'll start off with roll call. Commissioner Allen.
Present.
Commissioner Franks.
Present.
Commissioner Harrison.
Present.
Commissioner McLemore.
Present.
Commissioner Mann.
Present.
Commissioner Peterson. Alderman
Present.
Peterson, present. And Commissioner Williamson.
Present.
And Roger Lindsay, present. And Michael Orr is absent tonight at some school functions. So accommodations have been made to ensure that the public is able to participate in this meeting. The public may participate in the following ways: to watch the meeting on Franklin TV or the City of Franklin website, to watch the live stream through the City of Franklin Facebook and YouTube accounts, email comments to planningintake@franklintn.gov to be provided in full to the commission and included in the minutes, but not read aloud in their entirety during the meeting. Emailed comments are accepted until 12 noon on the day before the meeting. Comment in person in the boardroom. Speakers will also be asked to fill out a speaker card prior to the meeting starting. Speakers may sit in the boardroom or wait in the lobby. So the first item is the approval of our minutes from the October 28th, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
Move for approval.
We have a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Harrison
Alma
and a
second.
second by Alma. Is there any discussion, any comments, corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, by roll call vote. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Franks? Commissioner Harrison?
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Alderman Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson?
Aye.
And Chair Lindsay votes aye. Motion passes. The next item on our agenda, a little deviation from the way we've done it in years past, will be vote for chair and vice chair to take effect at the beginning of the new year, the January meeting. So is there a motion for election of the chair and vice chair for next year?
I nominate Roger Lindsay for chair.
I second.
You have a nomination by Scott Harrison for Roger Lindsay, and a second by Marcia Allen. Is there a motion also for vice chair?
I nominate Michael Orr.
I'll second.
If you don't show, go up. You don't show up, you get appointed.
That's right. We're elected.
So a motion by Scott Harrison and a second by Marcia Allen. We can do this as a motion to accept by acclamation.
So moved.
So moved.
So moved. Motion to accept by acclamation. And you seconded, Scott?
I think Marcia did.
Marcia? Okay, so we have a motion to accept Roger Lindsay as president and Michael Orr as vice chair by acclamation. All in favor say aye. I mean, I've got a roll call, so. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Franks?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison?
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Alderman Peterson?
Aye.
And Commissioner Williamson?
Aye.
That motion carries. The next item is for citizen comments for items that are not on the agenda. This is a time in our meeting when we open our meeting for citizens of Franklin to be heard on items that are not included on this agenda. As provided by law, the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission shall make no decisions or consideration of action of citizen comments except to refer the matter to the planning director for administrative consideration or to schedule the matter for Franklin Municipal Planning Commission consideration at a later date. So are there any citizen comments tonight? Yes, please, come to the lectern and give us your name and address. Okay. Right over to the lectern over here.
My name is Christina Potts. I'm the property owner next to some property that's up for approval for zoning tonight.
For tonight, is that on the agenda for tonight already?
Yes.
Okay, when we get to that item, there'll be a time for public comment on that item. So we can do that then? Okay, thank you. Any other comments by citizens for items not on tonight's agenda? This is kind of the open, free-for-all part of the meeting. Okay, so seeing none, announcements. Emily.
I do have a couple of announcements. Just really quickly, we are getting geared up to begin the Goose Creek small area plan effort. It's going to be a coordinated study to look at land use, transportation, and all other utilities in the area. This is primarily for a lot of the annex parcels that were outside of the UGB, but it also extends up to Long Lane. And we are in the process of looking into our public outreach. There's going to be a public meeting happening January 13th on Thursday night. We will get the details out to you and the public soon. We have just set the date this week, and we're finalizing the details of the time and location right now. But we're also looking to form some stakeholder groups that would meet in regards to this plan. And we are looking for a volunteer from the Planning Commission to serve in a stakeholder group. Roger Lindsay, Chair, has volunteered to serve as one of those representatives, but if anyone else is interested, I would ask that you just reach out to me directly, and we'll certainly find spots for anyone who's interested in the stakeholder groups. We'd love your input early in the process. And again, this is the Goose Creek area down at the Goose Creek I-65 interchange, primarily on the east side of the interstate. So just think that through. The time commitment would likely be 2 to 3 meetings during the process during the day. I don't know yet if they'd be in person or virtual, so I can't really tell you about that part
Okay.
yet.
Okay?
And then other than that, I just want to wish you all happy holidays and thank you for your service throughout the year. And I hope you and your families have a wonderful Christmas and holiday season.
Thank you. Okay, so give consideration to that. If anyone would like to participate in the stakeholder groups for the Goose Creek, be sure and let Emily know. Okay, the next item is a vote to place non-agenda items on the agenda.
There were none requested.
None requested?
None requested.
Okay. None from any commissioners? Okay. Okay. So the next item is the consent agenda. The items under the consent agenda are deemed by the Planning Commission to be non-controversial and routine in nature and will be approved by one motion. The items on the consent agenda will not be individually discussed. Any member of the Planning Commission, city staff, or the public who desires to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed and placed on the regular agenda. It will then be considered in its printed order. So the items for tonight that are listed on the consent agenda are items number 3 through 6 and items 16 and 17. Those are items on the consent agenda. Anyone wish to pull one of those items, or anyone? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Motion for
Second.
approval by Alma, and a second by Commissioner Harrison. A roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks, Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lindsay votes aye as well. That motion passes for passage of the consent agenda. The next item then is item 7, consideration of resolution 2021-161, a resolution amending the Coletta Park PUD subdivision to extend the vested rights for the property located northeast of South Carruthers Road and south of Murfreesboro Road. Staff presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to acknowledge that this is a different type of request than we've seen, I think, ever, since vesting has been introduced by state law. So if you give me the opportunity, I'm going to try to give you a presentation that lets you understand what vesting is and how it applies to projects. Then I'm going to go into the history of the Coletta Park subdivision, just to spark your memory about what happened and how it got approved and what was approved. And then I'll talk about the current status of it and what that means for this request to extend vesting. So let's start with vesting rights legislation. State law establishes vested property rights. It states that a vested property right is established with the approval of an entitling document. In our case, that's something like a development plan. And during a defined vesting period, the locally adopted development standards, such as the zoning ordinance, the subdivision regulations, our stormwater manual, all of those things that are in effect on the date of the approval will remain the development standards applicable to the property and the project during the vesting period. Okay, so then law further states that it describes this period of time. It talks about how the vesting period begins with a 3-year time frame, which an applicant must secure a final plan. So in this case, this is a site plan in our sense. They have to secure any necessary permits, and they have to begin site preparation. If they do all of those things, then they get an additional 2 years. And within that 2-year time period, they have to commence construction, go vertical with the building. A building, just one. If they get to that point, then the project is granted a full 10 years for vesting for a project that has one phase, or it gets 15 years for a project that has multiple phases. And that date that is the starting point is the day that that entitling document got approved. So when BOMA, grants approval of a project, that's the start clock, okay? So the applicant's request tonight is to extend that second milestone, that 2-year time frame to commence construction. They want to extend it 1 additional year to December 12th, 2023, in order for the applicant to have an additional year of time to begin construction, commence construction. So, the history of Coletta Park. If you remember, this approval process started back in September of 2015, and it included an annexation, a plan of service, a rezoning, and a development plan. The property was annexed, and it was zoned on December 2016. With that vote, BOMA granted the less intense R1 zoning district to the property. They were requesting something a little bit higher. BOMA granted them R1 zoning. So then the applicant continued to pursue a development plan based on the R1 zoning. The development plan was heard at Planning Commission on November 16th, 2017. Staff recommended approval with conditions, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the development plan with a vote of 9-0. The item moved on to the December 12th, 2017 BOMA meeting and public hearing. BOMA decided to approve the development plan with conditions by a vote of 4-3. So the current development plan, as currently vested, conforms to the then approved R1 zoning. The plan proposes 199 single-family lots with 2 modification of standard approvals. The lot widths vary between 65 feet and 120 feet, and it does have a handful of lots that are wider than 120 feet. Lots along the perimeter of the adjacent county subdivision are as wide or wider than their county neighbors, and there's a tree preservation easement that runs the length of that western border along Cross Creek subdivision. The associated traffic study required several off-site improvements, including improving Carruthers Road to a 3-lane connector road. The plan had 2 modification of standard approvals. One was a request to allow lots less than 1 acre in size. The zoning ordinance at the time of the development plan was submitted only allowed single-family lots in this character area to have a minimum lot size of 1 acre. This requirement, like I said, was part of the Character Area Overlay District, and that was based on the 2004 land use plan. However, the development plan was submitted shortly after the adoption of Envision Franklin, which places in the single-family residential design concept, which supported lots of a variety of sizes. So, since the new zoning ordinance was being drafted to better align with Envision Franklin policies, and since Envision Franklin supported the variety of lot sizes, staff recommended this modification of standards, and it was approved with a vote of 7-2 at Planning Commission and 5-2 at BOMA. The second modification of standards was to permit a cul-de-sac length longer than 500 feet and containing more than 20 lots. This request addressed both the north and the south end of the plan. At the northern property limits, the development abutted two county roads, existing county roads, Stanford Drive and Beacon Hill Drive. After lengthy discussions and several public hearings where citizens spoke mostly against full connectivity to these right-of-ways, the BOMA made it clear their desire to make these connections emergency access only. The plan shows right-of-way extending to the property limits with an emergency access gate installed. Also during the same time frame, the Williamson County Highway Commission voted to permanently close public access to Beacon Hill Drive and allow only emergency access to Stanford Drive. So without full connectivity, the city streets extending to these county roads were considered cul-de-sacs. And they did not meet design requirements outlined in the then applicable development standards, therefore needing an MOS. Okay, so then at the southern property limit, the right-of-way is extended to the limits of the development as required by the zoning ordinance. However, because the adjacent property is undeveloped, the last leg of the road is considered a cul-de-sac and exceeds the length limits. Conditions of approval were recommended for these MOS requests. The connection to Stanford Drive would be limited to emergency connection only, and the development would be limited to a maximum of 138 platted lots until a second access to Carruthers Road was approved. And the lots on the southern drive would require fire sprinklers if the second point of connection was not made available prior to the platting of those lots. Staff supported the MOS with conditions. Planning Commission recommended approval 9-0, and BOMA granted the approval with conditions 9-0. So that gets us to the status of the project today. Bear with me. This plan has complied with the requirements of the first 3-year period and is vested currently until December 12th, 2022. So that means they've got a site approval, they got a permit, and they began some site prep. While it did receive site plan approval, it does not have an active site plan. The applicant is currently pursuing a reapproval of a site plan for the section of the plan closest to Carruthers Road for 10 lots. The plan expired. I saw your face. The acquisition of easements for extending sewer to the development has proved more cumbersome than initially anticipated. The revised site plan currently being reviewed would be able to be served through the Lockwood Glen subdivision for sewer, while easement acquisition could continue for the larger development. And the revised site plan would also require the approved improvements to Carruthers Road. So let's talk about vesting impacts and the request at hand. So if the developer couldn't meet the milestones for that second 2-year period to commence construction by December 12th, 2022, and if the vesting period was not extended, the project entitlements would cease to exist. Project would stop. If there was anything active going on the site, we'd have to submit stop work orders. Entitlements are gone. A new development plan, if they wanted to continue to pursue development on the site, they would have to submit a new development plan and start from scratch. Neighborhood meetings, pre-application, all the way through the process. In review of the plan against current city regulations, the current plan generally complies with our development standards in place today. The length of the cul-de-sacs still do not meet requirements, but they would now be reviewed under a modification of street standards, which the engineering director would approve or disapprove, rather than a modification of standards. And over the last 5 years, the Williamson County Highway Commission has voted to close other city right-of-way connections to county roads, granting emergency access only, so the status of Stanford Drive and Beacon Hill Drive would likely not change. Also, properties to the south are still undeveloped, so there's no change in the connectivity in that location either. In terms of zoning ordinance compliance, staff could find only one major component of the plan that does not comply, which is block perimeter. At least one block in the development does not meet the maximum perimeter length of 2,400 feet. Another vesting impact to consider is the currently approved offsite improvements identified in the traffic study. Several developments have been approved after Coletta Park and have included traffic studies and subsequent offsite agreements that have used Coletta Park's requirements as existing conditions. If vesting expires on Coletta Park, or the vesting extension is not granted, these other offsite improvements may need to be reevaluated or redesigned. So staff recommends that the resolution be recommended to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen if Planning Commission determines that the continuation of vested rights is in the best interest of the community. That is a lot of information I gave you. I am happy to answer any questions after the applicant and the public speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's time now for public comment on this project. If anyone from the public wishes to speak to this item, you can come to the lectern. Seeing none, is someone here representing the applicant? Mr. Gamble?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Greg Gamble, and I'm representing the applicant tonight. To give you a little bit of background, the current developer, Suncrest Real Estate, has made a decision not to pursue the development at this time, and the property is now under contract by Ford Classic Homes. The site plan for Section 1 was submitted, was reviewed by city staff, was approved, but they did not pursue breaking ground and starting. As Amy mentioned, the development plan vesting rights are good till about December of next year, which is really not enough time for us to get the site plan reapproved, develop roads, sewer, water, get that infrastructure in the ground, create a plat, get the plat recorded, and then start construction on a house. So we appreciate your consideration to extend the vesting, and happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to extend the vesting.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to extend the vesting. Amy, was the request for 1 year additional extension?
Yes, 1
Okay.
year.
In your motion, Jimmy, is to extend by 1 year.
So when it changes ownership, changes hands, all of the rights still apply to that particular?
Correct,
Scott,
yeah.
you
The vesting
seconded
runs
it.
with the project, not with
Okay.
the owner.
No, okay, thank you.
It does run with the project, okay. Okay, so we have a proper motion to extend the vesting rights by 1 year. And that motion was made by Commissioner Franks and seconded by Commissioner Harrison. Is there any discussion on this item?
I have a question.
Yes,
You
Commissioner.
mentioned the easements for the sewer. Have those easements been obtained, or are you still working on those? Is that part of this as well?
Yes, we're still working on those easement acquisitions, but much closer.
Okay, so you think this, I guess I asked because I'm for the extension, and I almost wonder, I want to make sure you have enough time to do that without having to go through this process again.
It should be
So,
sufficient time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or discussion?
Actually, well, Commissioner Mann actually took my question. The other thing is, I'm glad that Mr. Gamble made the comment that there was someone new involved, because I was going to say that I was going to really question voting for the extension if the same people were working on it. Because I would say after this long, if they hadn't done it, I was going to question if they were. So thank you for that. No
Okay,
other
new
comments.
ownership, yeah. Great. Any other questions or discussion? So we have a proper motion by roll call vote. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Franks?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lindsay votes aye as well. That motion passes.
Also, Amy, nice job explaining that. Seriously, you did a nice job.
That ownership change was important.
If you ever have questions about vesting, I highly recommend speaking to Amy.
Okay. We'll get to do that again. Item number 8, consideration of Resolution 2021-167, a resolution amending the Refuge Center for Counseling PUD subdivision to extend the vested rights for the property located south of Long Lane and east of Williamson County Agricultural Center. Amy, please.
Yes, so, same story about how vested rights are applied. The difference with this one is that this applicant has not gotten a site plan approved yet, so their request is to extend that first milestone, that first 3-year milestone, for an additional 2 years. So they're requesting that their vesting be extended until June 24th, 2024, to allow them time to obtain an approval of a site plan, pull any necessary permits, and start site preparation. Let me give you a little history on the Refuge Center PUD. The approval process for this site began in February 2019 and also included a request for annexation, plan of services, zoning, and development plan. The zoning district requested by the applicant at the time was general office. The 4 items were heard by Planning Commission on April 25th, 2029, and staff recommended approval of all these items. Planning Commission recommended approval of the items as well, each by a vote of 7-1. The item moved on to BOMA, with the public hearing being held on June 25th, 2019. The BOMA elected to approve all of the items by a vote of 7-1, with the BOMA voting, the annexation and plan of service was a unanimous vote. The zoning and the development plan was approved with conditions by a vote of 6-1. The current development plan conforms to the then approved general office zoning. The plan includes a single office building, parking lot, and formal open space. The building is proposed at 15,200 square feet and 2 stories. The plan did not require any modifications of standards. A right turn lane into the site is proposed along Long Lane, although the associated traffic study did not define any off-site improvements. So, like I said, the current status is that the plan is within its first 3-year vesting milestone, and the applicant does not have an approved site plan yet, nor any permits. During the approval of this project, the extension of sewer was discussed at length, and 3 options for extending sewer were presented to staff, although the final location was to be determined with site plan review. 2 options extended sewer from the north, from Ladd Park, through properties fronting Long Lane. 1 option extended sewer from the east, from the Foxglove Farm subdivision and along Long Lane. Please note that with the zoning ordinance update in 2015, all plan unit developments were assigned a PD zoning district, so the zoning was vested at GO. The maps show it as PD. Just a quirk we got there, just to make it more complicated for you. So, the vesting impacts. So, if the vesting period is not extended, the project entitlements, again, would cease to exist. And again, if the Refuge Center wanted to continue working on this site, they would have to start from the beginning and file a plan starting at pre-application. In review of the plans against the current city regulations, the current plan does generally comply. 2 components of the plan do not conform to the current zoning ordinance. The building orientation does not meet frontage requirements. Today's regulations would require the building to have a main entry facing Long Lane and would limit parking to the side or rear of the building. Currently, the parking is mainly on the side of the building, but it does extend a little beyond the front facade. Also, there is a door facing Long Lane, but it would need to be emphasized and include better pedestrian access. The vested ordinance permitted DRT to waive sidewalk requirements along Long Lane. The current ordinance requirements would require the project to install a sidewalk or request a modification of standards if they chose not to do so. Under current requirements of the major thoroughfare plan, the project would need to dedicate approximately 14.5 feet of right-of-way, which could be accommodated in the current design, although a retaining wall may have to be included in the redesign of the site. So again, staff recommends that Resolution 2021-167 be recommended for approval if Planning Commission determines that the continuation of vested rights is in the best interests of the community. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. It's time now for public comment on this item. Does anyone from the public wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll turn it over to a presentation by applicant. Mr. Gamble?
Thank you. Hello again, my name is Greg Gamble, and representing the Refuge Center. The need for the Refuge Center's new facility is greater now than it ever has been. Just last month, they had a waiting list of about 300 individuals. The increase in anxiety and mental health issues, not only related to COVID, but just kind of the nature of stress in our community, makes the need for this facility even greater. Due to an increase in construction costs, the Refuge Center has had to increase and raise the goal that they need to raise funds in order to start the construction. Now, just last month, their board voted to release the consultant team to move ahead with the site plan documents. So those are in process now, and they're going from design development level in the architecture to a full construction document set so that we have the information needed. Just 2 weeks ago, the Refuge Center met with all of the adjacent property owners that are between their property and Ladd Park going to the east. And we have a sewer alignment that will be staked in the field next week so that it can be reviewed by city staff. Once the stakes are reviewed in the field, it will be surveyed, the easement documents will be prepared, and those will be signed by the adjacent owners. All of the adjacent owners are cooperating with the Refuge Center and are excited to see it move forward. And so they haven't had time to get the site plan put together quite yet as they're continuing to raise funds for the facility. So thank you for your consideration.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion for this item?
Move for approval.
Second.
Was that Alma? A motion by Commissioner McLemore,
Second by me, Scott Harrison.
I have a motion by Commissioner McLemore and a second by Commissioner Harrison for approval. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lindsey votes aye. That motion passes unanimously. Item number 9 actually goes in tandem with item number 10, the first being a rezoning request and the second being a development plan. Consideration of ordinance 2021-45, an ordinance to rezone 0.78 acres from office residential OR district to planned PD 1.28/6500 district for the property located north of West Main Street and west of Downs Boulevard, located at 1624 West Main Street. That's the 1624 West Main Street PUD subdivision. Staff presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Envision Franklin places this parcel in the neighborhood mixed-use design concept, which supports local commercial, professional office, and a variety of housing types as recommended uses. For new development along West Main, Envision Franklin specifically states commercial nodes within these corridors are encouraged at intersections. The eclectic mix of land uses, such as neighborhood retail and restaurants, should remain since they make this area unique. The applicant intends to construct a 6,500 square foot commercial building on the property, which is in alignment with the recommendations of Envision Franklin. The applicant is also requesting a density of 1.28, that is 1 unit for the property. No residential units are being proposed at the time. However, should a future property owner wish to redevelop the property for residential purposes, the development plan would be set up for them to do so without requesting a revision. And due to certain site constraints, the property could not accommodate a commercial structure and a residential structure. There's no way they could do both. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Yes, please. Come to the lectern.
Thank you for hearing my comment. My name is Christina Potts. I am the property owner next door to this property, and I do not wish to share half the driveway with commercial traffic. I've had access to Mr. English's half of the driveway for years as residentially zoned. Furthermore, what he proposes is a strip mall right next to my residence and make me use his property to get to mine, which would cut off my road access to West Main. So then my property would have no value if he was to cut my road access off. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Seeing none, is there someone here representing the applicant?
Yes, thank you. Adam Sager with Dale & Associates, 516 Heather Place. We're the civil engineer for the project and representing the applicant. This property, I know it's tied to the development plan. I'll save the modification of standards and other presentation for that item agenda. But on this one, this does meet Envision Franklin. We have taken careful consideration of our surroundings and the context of where we are. And we are planning on doing a small neighborhood commercial type of place, and the architectural will meet more of a residential character, not a strip center or commercial. Ms. Potts is correct. Her driveway does come onto this property, and we have revised the plan to make sure that we are not cutting off that driveway in any way. We're not cutting off a driveway that is still going to be in place. And so we can grant an access easement over the top of that existing driveway. It gets onto us about 3/4 of the way, so that will remain in place. And I know on the development plan, there'll be a picture kind of showing that. But I do think this would be a really good use for the property and for this position, and we appreciate your consideration for approval. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Seeger. Is there a motion on this item?
Move for approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner McLemore, recommend approval to BOMA,
Second,
and a second by,
Allen.
is there any discussion on this item?
Yeah, I share Ms. Potts' concerns, but I just want to reserve that for the next item when
development plan.
reviewing the development plan.
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion?
Same.
Okay, I have a-
Reserve concerns.
Okay, we have a proper motion, a motion for recommendation of approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. By roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lindsay votes aye. That motion passes. Item number 10, the consideration of Resolution 2021-152, a resolution approving a development plan for 1624 West Main PUD subdivision with two modifications of development standards, that of a transitional buffer and also for sidewalks, for the property located north of West Main Street and west of Downs Boulevard, located at 1624 West Main Street. Staff presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. To reiterate from the last presentation, Envision Franklin does support neighborhood-scale commercial uses at intersections such as this location. Envision Franklin also speaks to architecture that it needs to be at a pedestrian scale. We talked about the architecture at joint conceptual workshop, and that concern came up. The applicant has resubmitted plans with architecture that is residential in nature and meeting that request from the commission here and Envision Franklin. The project does have two modifications of standards. The first one is to allow a parking dumpster and a drive aisle in the transition one zone of the property when commercial and non-residential uses abut a residential use. There is a requirement in this area of town to have a 25-foot transition zone 1, which is plantings only. Then there is a transition zone 2, which is 50 feet wide, which allows parking. And then 75 feet from the property line, a building is allowed to be constructed. The site is tight in nature, and so the applicant has requested that some parking, the dumpster, and the drive aisle be located in that first 25-foot zone. One of the goals was, as the applicant stated earlier, to keep the existing drive access accessible to the neighbor and allow that to be in that space. Looking at the planting requirements for transition zone 1, even with these items in that zone, they can still meet the minimum planting requirements needed. And further, the building itself is 1 story in scale now, and so the massing differences are not as out of context as they could be with other types of commercial buildings. So staff is recommending approval of modification of standard number 1. The second modification of standards is to not install sidewalks along West Main Street. The applicant has talked about wishing to defer the installation, but there's not really an avenue to grant that type of deferral, so the request would have to be to not install sidewalks. As we've spoke at recent planning commissions, the city receives many requests for sidewalk gap fill projects, and those become larger expenses for the city to take on after the fact. It's more prudent to do sidewalk installation with the development at the time. The site does have unique conditions. There are a couple power poles that I think the applicant's going to talk about. But there are options to install the sidewalk not directly along the right-of-way. Sidewalks can be placed in public access easements and meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. So for those reasons, staff recommends denial of this modification of standards. Now, should the Planning Commission want to approve that modification of standards, staff would request that you add the condition that fees in lieu be paid at $19 a square foot to accommodate that future sidewalk installation need. Overall, staff recommends approval with conditions to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for this project. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to speak to this item? Okay.
The map that you're looking at doesn't reflect how Mr. English wants to do the driveway. The way that it's proposed cuts my access off, and I have to enter or exit from Downs Boulevard or from, I guess that would be the northeast to even get to my property. And I would have to go into his property to then go to my property. My road access would be totally cut off.
I can't tell, look at this.
Thank you for hearing my comment.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak to this item? Is there someone here to represent the applicant?
Yes, thank you. Adam Sager, Dale and Associates, to represent the applicant. I don't know, is the plan available to view on the screen? There we go. And I just want to show Commission and Ms. Potts as well that it is not our intent at all to encumber the driveway whatsoever. We have, there was a plan to replace the existing driveway with the shared paved driveway that was presented to Franklin. We did have a plan that did show that. We have corresponded with Ms. Potts, and she sent an email and said she did not wish to do that, and therefore we separated the two. And so we have this right here is the driveway, and you can see the property line goes through, and that's the as-built driveway. And so we're going to put the paved driveway straight in right here, and then that one will still exist. On the plan, there is still an option to connect over if that would ever be the case, but the driveways are separated. We would not be encumbering access to the house at all. We also, in our mock.
That's image 7 for us.
I can't see.
Which one?
Couldn't see what he was pointing to.
I don't see that.
Item 10.
Item 10, the last attachment, page 3.
Okay, because I didn't see it.
And so that kind of segues into the modification of standards one that Amy mentioned is this site is tight. And I think it's a great place to redevelop and do small neighborhood commercial. But under our new ordinance, we've got these 3 transitional buffers that make it very difficult and really kind of squeeze the site. And so we found a way to fit in a lot of the parking and building and meet all the zoning requirements. However, it's a little bit too tight to do much with. So what we're asking for is over here on your left side, there are parking spaces and the dumpster we put all the way in the back, and we will still landscape the same way as if it was still had the transitional buffer. So the transitional buffer requires X amount of plantings. We are providing X amount of plantings in the same manner. It's just going to be in a tighter spot. And so we'll have that all landscaped, and that is required so that we can meet the parking for the building. And if this were ever to be expanded to the left or to the west, yes, in the future, it's set up in a good way to continue that, rather than if you had a buffer and then if this type of use were expanded to another property or two, now you have a buffer in the way that would have to go away, and it gets kind of weird. So that's modification of standards number 1. Number 2, it is absolutely correct that the city on all of these site plans that we bring before you, sidewalks are being planned along the existing corridor, along these. We feel we have a unique situation here. We're not arguing the need for sidewalks whatsoever. We're not here to say, hey, we shouldn't build a sidewalk. We just we've looked at this site in particular and have identified a few unique items why it's worth us asking the question to request this. And do you have a couple of those slides, Amy? And I asked you to show this.
Please.
This in
can't
pink
see.
are all the areas where we don't have sidewalk in this area, and the green is where we do have sidewalk. And the goal is to have sidewalk everywhere there is pink. We're all in agreement with that. Right here at Downs in Maine, though, there's really nothing else around us.
Yeah, on that, we can't
Okay.
see that, so you have to point, somebody has to point over here. Yeah.
Okay.
Can one of you all point to where he's talking
It's on her
about?
hand.
Yeah,
There.
it wasn't at first.
It was not at first, but
Right.
it is now.
Okay.
Okay.
And so we are proposing sidewalk along Downs. We are proposing sidewalk down to the intersection. This becomes unique because West Main in particular is a TDOT right-of-way that very likely will improve at some point in the future. And especially at intersections, when TDOT improves a road, especially at intersections, they're going to coordinate with Franklin staff, with engineers on, hey, how does this exactly look? Where do the power poles go? Where's the sidewalk going to go? Do we need a turn lane? Do we need another turn lane? And we've dedicated a lot of right-of-way even on this property to accommodate that. So keep in mind that this road may be improved at some point in the future. And so our thought was, and can you go to the next slide as well? Let me mention one more thing on this. We have a pretty significant challenge, is that we have 2 fairly large power poles right in front of our site. You can see both of those on the property, and it kind of goes up an embankment a little bit. To relocate those 2 power poles would basically kill the project or kill any development here at this time, because this project in particular isn't big enough to absorb the cost of relocating those 2 power poles. And so we went to staff and basically are begging, please don't put us in a position where we have to relocate the power poles, and staff has been gracious to work with us and look at alternate locations, and that's been great. The reason I'm bringing both of these points up is not to get out of building sidewalks, but to try to think about it logically, that if TDOT is going to build this at some point, if they're going to relocate these power poles, if they're gonna redo this kind of roadway and intersection, would it be better for us to pay a fee in lieu of, so that those sidewalks to go somewhere else today? And if there was a sidewalk across the street or somewhere very close, we wouldn't be asking as much, but because there's nothing else really around us today, we would be willing to pay the fee in lieu of, instead of trying to build the sidewalk here and put it in a position where we really don't want to mess with those power poles. And so that's why we're asking, if that makes sense. So I appreciate your consideration on that. Now, there's 2 other points I want to make very quickly. One was the architecture. When I came to the joint conceptual workshop, I got pretty beat up on the architecture.
Yeah.
I'm not the architect.
Yes.
But I totally understand. And we heard you loud and clear. And Mike went back to the drawing board. We looked at character images, and it is the intent to have a 1-story residential-esque type of project. These are character images. This is intent. It's not exact. There's still work to be done on it. But we are providing you kind of a glimpse at the mindset of where we're heading with it. And so I wanted to bring that before you. And then number 2, there was also comments made by Alma and Marcia about the history of this project. And
Right.
I learned a little bit more about the history. You guys mentioned it. And I know Mr. English has gone back and done a little research. And the name on my engineering plans is just the address of the property. But yes, we're willing to call the project and put something on the building to call it Booker's Corner. There was an
Yeah,
old family
that'd
who
be
lived
awesome.
in this area
That'd be awesome.
with the last name
That's
of
gonna be
Booker.
awesome.
You may know more about it.
gonna
You
be
can
awesome.
teach me. But my understanding is they had quite a few kids, and they all
Yes,
went to
yes.
college, and they were a well-respected family right here in this general area.
Families.
And I know Mr. English has spoken with the Booker family about doing that. And so because of y'all mentioning that, we're happy to accommodate that as well.
That's good.
And so those are my points, and I'm here for any questions. So I really appreciate consideration on that.
Thank you.
And I do too.
Let's, is there a motion on this? I need a main motion to start with.
Second,
So we have a motion for approval
and Alma seconds.
by Commissioner Allen and Alma McLemore. The second. Is there any discussion? Okay, Commissioner Harrison?
A couple things concern me. Do you have a new curb cut received from TDOT to put your new driveway in, since that is a state highway?
We would have to obtain that during site plan
Right.
level.
And in doing that, would that force the property owner next door to relinquish her right-of-way on the curb cut?
I don't want to claim authority to answer that question, but my understanding in working with TDOT and all properties with access is that you can't take one away if it's already there. In other words, you can't have a property and take away their access that already exists.
So could you not work with the neighbor next door and relocate her driveway where it's fully on her property and give her private access to her own property?
Yeah, I've got an email with Ms. Potts asking to work, and she said she did not want to work with us.
Okay.
My problem with that it's clouding both titles. For future, for resale, disclosure, it's a mess and it needs cleaning up. You shouldn't have a driveway on the property line unless she owns the property next to it.
I don't disagree. However, if she's not willing to allow us to, the driveway is on our property, and so we are willing to grant an easement to clean up title. So the easement would be put in place as a cross-access easement, which would clean up any title issues.
That was neat.
It's just a matter of
Jimmy
lining those
jumped on
lines
me. He
up,
jumped
correct?
on me.
I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Commissioner McLemore?
No, I think Scott had one more thing.
I have one more
Okay,
question
I'm sorry.
too, because this site came to us previously, and it basically got turned down because is engineering present tonight? Streets, because they said they could not allow for the possible expansion by TDOT through that intersection.
I don't remember that. I don't remember that.
It was a building that was
I think
proposed
a
for this
previous
site.
project
That wasn't-
attempted a larger site,
That wasn't
Okay.
the
a
same
larger
thing.
building. They had problems parking that
Huh.
with the stormwater needs that were
wasn't the
there
same
thing.
and the dedication of right-of-way. I
So-
believe this plan does accommodate their right-of-way.
And would
That's
accommodate
correct.
TDOT's future expansion?
They are accommodating our request for an additional turn lane and right-of-way dedication to accommodate that.
And that was the
Um,
problem with the previous plan, right?
The previous plan, I believe, did have a larger building
Mhm. Okay.
and had conflicts with where they were proposing stormwater controls. We certainly still have to vet those issues with this development as well when we get to site plan, but we are working through those.
So,
Okay.
and so part of our request to them was to accommodate this turn lane, this,
Yes, sir.
which to me goes to the question about sidewalks, because that's where that sidewalk would have to go, in that dedicated turn lane area, since the rest of the property between that turn lane right-of-way and the building is stormwater detention ponds, what have you.
He is accurate in that if the sidewalk is placed where it would ultimately be with the right-of-way dedication, with the turn lanes and everything in place, it would conflict with the power poles that are existing. But that is why Amy mentioned that we do allow in instances like that where it's an undue hardship to set the sidewalk further back and within an access easement, but outside of right-of-way. So if they were to install the sidewalk, it could be in an access easement further into the property.
In
behind the
a
power
typical highway department reconstruction of an intersection like this, would not sidewalks be part of the construction of what they did in that intersection?
Yes. At this present time, we don't have any forecast of when
Right.
TDOT may widen West Main, and certainly if and when they do, utility relocation will be part of that project as well. It's been staff's judgment that having sidewalk there in the interim does provide some benefit that, ultimately it would be replaced and removed in the future, but without any forecast of when that might take place. It's been our judgment that the sidewalk should be constructed per the zoning ordinance.
All right.
May I ask on access,
Yes.
was next.
isn't it also the case that there's access from Downs?
I was next.
Vehicular or pedestrian? What's your question?
Oh, I mean, that
Yes.
doesn't, the lot has an access to Downs Boulevard, doesn't it?
Right, they're installing a curb cut to have cars that exit that way.
Yeah, so.
Can I ask a question?
Commissioner McLemore?
I want to make sure I understand this. The access right now, the driveway, whose property is it on?
It's mostly on Mr. English's property.
Okay, so it's her
And
property.
it straddles the property line. I don't know if you can take your cursor, it's in a dashed line, and the property line kind of runs down through it. And so the driveway, the property line's like in the middle of the driveway.
And you're willing to give an easement to give access, so she can have full access to a driveway, a separate driveway,
Yes, ma'am.
and then there will be a separate driveway to your building?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
I have to be a driveway connected to the new parking lot.
But it would be two separate driveways?
Yeah,
No, they will integrate
Yes,
into
it
one
will,
driveway.
no, she said.
No, it will be two
It's gonna be
separate
two
driveways.
separate
Her driveway
driveways.
will remain,
Okay,
and there is a stub or a appendage over to the new
okay.
access so that she can have access to
Right.
either one, or should the property want to
Right.
develop over
Yeah.
time, they can also access the new right in,
so-
right out.
All right, thank you for
I have
clarifying.
a question
Yeah.
regarding that. It looks like part of the driveway is covered by parking spaces. If those parking spaces are constructed, is there still enough room there to turn into the
Yeah, it's a good question. One that we measured out is that there's gravel that spills out onto Mr. English's property, so that wouldn't constitute a driveway. It's just spilled out gravel, people park there. And so the driveway would remain intact, and there would still be, I think 14-ish feet. A driveway will be about 10 to 12 feet wide. I think mine's 10 feet wide, a lot of them 10, 11, 12 feet wide, something like that. And so there would be, at a bare minimum, that much access all the way up through there along the existing driveway.
Got my question.
That's
all I
helpful. And
need.
my follow-up question is, if we agree to this dual access scenario, it seems like it would be very unsafe for Ms. Potts to turn left out of her driveway, because people would be competing to turn right out of your access right next to each other. Is that fair? Am I looking at that correctly?
Yes, especially if you have two well-traveled roads, you don't want to put them together, which is why we proposed to combine them at first. But if she is unwilling to combine them, we understand, and we're just keeping the separation now. Typically, under a single driveway for a single house, there isn't a lot of traffic. But yeah, I mean, you're correct. If somebody were to come at the exact same time, yeah, you'd be right next to one another, but yeah, there could be a conflict of movement.
Are there any issues associated with making what would essentially be another cut for the second driveway?
Well, I think that this is conceptual,
Okay.
so to speak, and unless we get the TDOT's approval, we would not be able to make the cut. But we have to propose it to be able to ask TDEC. I think, did I say that right?
You gotta ask before you can get it.
That's
Yeah, we
correct.
have to ask before we can get it. We still have to get the permit, just like we're doing a development plan rezone right now. But unless we meet stormwater regulations and meet all the stormwater requirements, we can't get a permit to go build it, if that makes sense. Or at least that's how I see
Okay.
it. Lance, correct me if I'm wrong.
Other
That's
questions?
correct.
I think Marcia.
Commissioner Franks?
Commissioner Allen had her hand up.
Commissioner Allen.
Commissioner Allen, I'm sorry.
I'll leave the driveway thing alone, but one of the things that I wanted to make clear, and you're right about the Booker, but for the record, it was Booker brothers, it's both of the brothers, Monroe and William Booker. Although Monroe Booker's the one that had all the children, but it wasn't so much about the children, it's about the brothers, Monroe and William, who owned the service station, the business owners down the street, was the reason for the Booker name.
Corner.
And I'm gonna leave that driveway alone. Thank you, I'm done.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen. Commissioner Franks?
There again, it seems like an easy solution, but I'm sure it's stressful for Ms. Potts and everybody involved. I think she may have had her hand up and wanted to ask something. Didn't know if we could let her make her comment.
Ms. Potts? I'm sorry. Ms. Potts,
Please.
if you could come to the lectern, otherwise we can't pick you up, so.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to correct what he said, that, he said I was unwilling to work with him. That's not exactly so. What he had proposed to me was, different from this, and it did cut my access off. This one I have not seen before. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
It's just, this is clearly different.
When you talk about cutting your access off, are you talking about access to Downs,
Access to West Main.
West Main?
My property,
Your property fronts on West Main.
correct.
So you're talking about a driveway just to West Main Street.
Right, and what he had proposed was I have to enter and exit his property to get to mine.
Okay.
Commissioner Lindsay,
Okay.
on the plan that was presented at Joint Conceptual Workshop, the right-in, right-out location was scooted to the west, and so it effectively was in front of where her driveway exits today. And I believe that's what we're talking about here, that it officially impeded her ability to access her site. They've moved it to the east so that the
Okay.
current driveway remains, and that the new one is also.
And then there's
connected.
room for a driveway on her property.
She can certainly
If
move
you-
her driveway to the west and have it completely on her property, but the one that is in existence today can remain unimpeded.
So from
The
my
driveway
perspective,
was
I can
still
support
there.
the dual drive with you granting the easement to Ms. Potts. It seems like that's what you would like, is for your existing driveway to remain. I would, however, strongly encourage you to consider tying into his access,
Yes.
just for safety purposes. I really do think there's some safety concerns. I mean, it's really your decision. And I can support you having an easement to access your current driveway. I would strongly encourage that conversation.
Thank you.
Okay. So, and I think that the language, the wording of the modification of standards is to request to allow parking, dumpster, and a drive aisle in transition zone 1. And I think that item can proceed without a decision being made whether there's going to be a second driveway constructed or she relies on a connection. So I'd like to do that. I'd like to go back to item number 10 is for modification of standard number 1, to a request to allow parking, dumpster, and drive aisle into transition zone 1. Is there a motion on that item?
Well, I'll let the motion, and I'm gonna have a question on that.
You got a motion in favor of approval right
We've
now.
we've got a main motion with a request for approval, and now we're at modifications of standards.
Right.
We've got 2 of those to handle. So,
I motion to approve.
okay, so we have a motion to approve modification of standard number 1.
I'll second that.
And so but what you just said was I need to go back and find that. You just reworded it, is what you're saying? You just
Not yet,
Is that what
not
you're
yet.
saying?
No, he's just saying that
Are you
the
just
drive
rephrasing?
aisle, wherever it ends up being, this modification standard
Kind of stands on its own.
encompasses
Okay.
that.
Kind of
I
stands
gotcha.
on its
Okay,
own.
I'm good with that. Gotcha, okay.
So, and certainly, we would encourage cooperative work to
Right, yes.
to create a
To get there.
scenario that works for both property owners.
Okay, gotcha.
So we have a motion to approve modification of standard number 1. Motion made by Commissioner Franks and seconded by Commissioner Mann. Is there any further discussion on modification of standards number 1? Seeing none by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison, Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lindsay votes aye, so that modification of standard passes. The second modification of standards is that of not requiring sidewalks along West Main Street. And so, is there a motion on this item?
I move for approval of that modification, accepting that, based on the information that was given and the fact, and the fact that money can be put into a pool
Okay,
for
so is
future
your motion?
use.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, then you would need to make a motion to
Correct.
approve a condition
Yeah, with
that they
condition
pay
that.
$19 per square foot
Yeah, okay.
in lieu of.
So we-
Yeah,
So we have a
because right
motion-
now, the sidewalks are not going anywhere. Excuse me, go ahead. Scott, are you
Her
saying
motion
something?
is to approve not doing sidewalks, but instead paying a fees in lieu of $19 per square foot.
Has it been seconded? I'll second.
I don't know, is there a second?
Second. You second?
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner McLemore and a second by Commissioner Allen. Is that right? I'm sorry.
I did.
Commissioner Peterson. My hearing is not what it used to be. Is there any further discussion on this item?
The one thing I will say, though, is, as sad as I'd like to say, the state will never, I will have great, 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 great grandchildren before the state looks at doing anything on this part of West Main Street. I had to get that out. Feel better now. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner
Well,
Allen.
it's taken 50 years to get McHatcher, that part of it.
Did
Literally.
Did I hear you correctly that if TDOT were to come and widen it, would they install new sidewalks if we didn't have them installed? Or would they only relocate them if they were already existing?
Generally speaking, any TDOT roadway project is going to include sidewalks
Yeah.
and utility relocation as part of that,
They will.
that typical project
Okay.
limits.
It's part of their,
Our great-grandchildren just be
The,
dead when
the
they
question
do it.
is when that occurs.
Yeah, the timing. Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks, Commissioner Harrison, Commissioner McLemore,
aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lindsey votes aye. That motion passes. We're back to the main motion. The main motion then includes the two modifications of standards that we've just both approved. One, allowing parking dumpster and drive aisle, and modification of standards number 2, not requiring sidewalks, but requiring payment in lieu of. So we're back to the main motion. Is there any new discussion on the main motion, Commissioner
Should-
Mann?
This is maybe a question more for staff. Should we amend the motion to require an easement for the existing I'll call it as-built driveway? Or is that part of conditions subject to approval? Existing.
I can't remember if we put it as a condition of approval.
It is currently indicated that way on their development plan
So it's
as their
already
intent to
there.
provide that easement.
It's there.
So it's already listed on the plan. They'll be
Right.
doing it.
Okay.
There's no need for a condition.
Okay, okay.
Okay?
And it comes back, does it come back to us?
Goes to
We
Boma,
don't,
goes to Boma.
It comes back.
I didn't go to them. Not that far.
Only for the site plan. yes. For the site plan.
Yeah,
For
actually,
the
it
site
would
plan.
come back to you because there is
site
a
plan.
buffer on it. So the site, you will see the site plan
Right.
at Planning Commission when they get to that stage.
Can I have the option to put the sidewalk in? Once he completes his grading plan and figures out it may be less expensive to do that sidewalk as opposed to paying the fee?
Not with those power poles.
Why
Not with those
why
power
would those
poles.
power
Nope,
poles-
they gotta decide now.
I was just curious.
The pros aren't what, the cons are. It's just not.
I mean, I
it's
never
just
got
not
out of putting a
sensible.
sidewalk on anything, I always had to put them on.
Well, it depends on the location and
That's okay.
many factors involved, Jimmy.
For $19 a foot, I'd
Don't
love
take
to
it
do that.
personal.
Is somebody wish to
$19
make
a
a
square
motion to
foot.
reconsider? Otherwise, that motion's been passed.
Right.
So we're back to the main motion. Seeing no further discussion by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison, Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lindsey votes aye. So that takes care of item number 10. Thank you, Adam. Item number 11. Again, we're taking these in pairs. Consideration of ordinance 2021-47, an ordinance to rezone 2.24 acres from planned PD district to planned PD 11.61 district for the property located south of North Petway Street and east of Shawnee Drive at 1101 Shawnee Drive, that being the Shawnee PUD subdivision. Staff presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Envision Franklin Land Use Plan places this parcel in mixed residential design concept, which supports the proposed rezoning. It specifically states, under special consideration, that the Franklin Housing Authority properties may include a limited number of multifamily residential in accordance with their master plans. The density proposed in this rezoning and subsequent development plan includes duplexes, multiplexes, and multifamily structures for a total of 26 units in 6 buildings. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Thank you. It's time now for public comment, if anyone wishes to speak to this item from the public. Seeing none, is there someone here to represent the applicant?
Good evening. My name is Robert James, and I'm with James Plus Associates and representing the Franklin Housing Authority. We don't have anything additional to add to staff comments, but if any commissioner has a question, we'll be happy to answer that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
Move for approval.
Second.
Was that Commissioner Allen?
And Commissioner Peterson was second.
So we have a motion for approval, and this is recommend approval to Board of Mayor and Alderman. And
Commissioner, Alderman Peterson.
Alderman
I
Peterson.
guess would be.
Sorry. Alderman Peterson.
a second by Alderman Peterson. Is there any discussion on this item? This is for the ordinance to rezone. So by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Franks?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison? Commissioner McLemore?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Alderman Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson?
Aye.
And Commissioner Lindsay votes aye. Item 12, for the same project, consideration of Resolution 2021-163, a resolution approving a development plan for Shawnee PUD subdivision with 3 modifications of development standards, those being for parking, for foundation heights, and for transitional buffers, for the property located south of North Petway Street and east of Shawnee Drive, located at 1101 Shawnee Drive. Staff presentation.
Thank you. As previously stated in the last staff report, Envision Franklin supports the uses and the building types proposed with this development plan. The plan as proposed features a variety of building types with setbacks and architectural styling that is compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods. Walkways create a pedestrian-friendly community that connects to city parks and green spaces. The plan overall meets the recommendations and principles of Envision Franklin. They do have 3 modifications of standards. The first one is to revise the minimum parking standards for multifamily to 2.25 spaces per 2-bedroom unit and 2.75 spaces per 3-bedroom unit. Currently, the zoning ordinance requires that 2.5 spaces are required for every 2-bedroom unit, so that's a request to decrease that number by 0.25. And it requires 3 spaces for every 3-bedroom unit. So again, a request to reduce that number by 0.25. In addition to site constraints, the applicant has provided additional examples and supplementary information that justifies this request. And this same request was previously approved by BOMA for the Cherokee PUD subdivision across the street. So staff recommends approval of modification of standards number 1. The second modification of standards is to remove the 18-inch minimum height for foundations for the non-multifamily residential building types. The zoning ordinance requires that buildings other than multifamily buildings have a minimum 18-inch foundation. In order to comply with the applicable housing regulations, the residential buildings must be constructed for Franklin Housing Authority, the buildings must be constructed at ground level or feature ADA accessible ramps to the various entries. Given the public nature of this housing project, it's important to provide as much accessibility for each dwelling unit as possible. Again, this same request was approved by BOMA on the Cherokee PUD subdivision, so staff recommends approval of this modification of standards. The third request is to encroach 550 square feet of a building footprint into Transition Zone 2. This is specifically on the south side of the project. Again, Transition Zone 1 is 25 feet from the property line. It is plantings only. The second 50 feet, that's Transition Zone 2, is supposed to be minimally construction, so parking can be there, but not buildings. Their building wants to encroach the corner of it by 550 square feet. Due to the long, narrow shape of the lot and what is proposed provides more of a buffer between the new and existing development than what's there today, staff can support this modification of standards request. Essentially, the buildings that are there today are closer now than they're proposing, even though they would be in the transition zone.
Right.
And overall, staff recommends that Planning Commission recommend approval with conditions of this development plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? Seeing none, is there someone, Robert, you want to speak to the item again as a representative of the applicant?
Yes. This is Robert James with James Plus Associates representing the Franklin Housing Authority. We don't have anything additional to add, but we will be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. So we're looking now for a main motion again. Does someone have a motion? We're looking for a recommendation of approval to BOMA.
Move for approval with staff conditions.
I'll second.
So approval with staff conditions by Commissioner Harrison. And
Second.
so we have proper motion. Okay, so that's the main motion. We will take up now, we'll take up the modifications of standard each individually. Modification of standard number 1, a request to revise the minimum parking standards for multifamily to 2.25 spaces per 2-bedroom unit and 2.75 spaces per 3-bedroom unit. Is there a motion on this modification of standards request?
Move for approval.
Second.
Is that
Nick, move for approval.
Commissioner? Okay. By Commissioner Mann, and a second by Commissioner McLemore. Is there any discussion on this motion, on this item?
I just want to say that this comment applies to all three of the modification standards, but for projects of this type, as long as the standard being modified doesn't impact safety, I think this is entirely appropriate for us to modify these types of standards. We need these projects, and they shouldn't be weighed down by having to deal with standards that don't affect safety. So,
Okay,
And
wanna
by
say
the
that.
way, there'll
Thank
be a lot more parking places than there are now.
Yeah.
right.
I mean, even just for one
For
thing.
sure.
For two, as I recall, for two adjoining, there's only one parking
One
place.
place. That's right.
Good, great. Okay, by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lindsay votes aye. So modification of standards request number 1 has been approved. The second modification of standard is a request to remove the 18-inch minimum height for foundations for non-multifamily residential building types. Is there a motion on this modification of standards request?
For approval.
Second.
Was that you, Alma? And Commissioner Harrison, second. This is a motion for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lindsay votes aye. So modification of standards request number 2 has passed. The third modification of standards is a request to encroach 550 square feet of building footprint into transition zone number 2. Is there a motion on this modification of standards request?
Move for approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Harrison
I'll
for
second.
approval,
I'll second that.
and second by Commissioner Mann. Any further discussion? By roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lindsay votes aye. So that motion of modification of standards request also passes. So all three modification of standards requests have been approved. So back to our main motion. And this is for the recommendation of approval of the development plan to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen with staff comments. Any further discussion? By roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lindsay votes aye as well. That motion passes. Thank you, Robert. Item number 13, consideration of Resolution 2021-164, a resolution approving a revised development plan for the Gateway Village PUD subdivision for the property located south of Linwood Way and west of Franklin Road at 120 Davenport Boulevard.
Okay.
Staff presentation?
Yes, thank you. The applicant is requesting to add educational facilities as a permitted use within the Gateway Village PUD subdivision. The proposed academy, this is a civic institutional use and is not currently listed on the plan. The proposed academy would utilize an existing office space within the development, an existing built office space. No additional buildings or square footage is being proposed with this revision. Due to the nature and management of the private academy, no additional parking spaces are required. And the most recent revision of the Gateway Village PUD subdivision was approved in November 2021. Specifically, the addition of institutional uses into a planned unit development is what is the requirement to be approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, which is why it's coming forward this way. And staff recommends approval with conditions.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item? Seeing none, is there someone here representing the applicant? Yes, sir.
Jim Lukens, Lukens Engineering, the applicant. Mark Claypool with Galileo Education is here tonight too, in case you have questions, but basically it's just a land use. They're a digital online learning school, very different from a traditional school.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
Recommend approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
We have a recommendation for approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen by Commissioner Harrison,
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Franks. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Franks?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison?
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Alderman Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson?
Aye.
And Commissioner Lindsay votes aye. That motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Lukens. Item number 14 is the Berry Farms Reams Fleming Tract PUD subdivision, Development Plan Revision 4, reconfiguring site layout on 13.44 acres located west of Paytonsville Road and south of McBride Lane. Staff.
Thank you. This development plan revision reconfigures one section of the plan from a series of small-scale offices and commercial buildings to a single office user spanning 2 buildings. Staff has been working with the applicant to ensure that their plans comply with Envision Franklin, as previously discussed at the Joint Conceptual Workshop, and the applicant has requested that this item be deferred to the January 27th Planning Commission meeting to allow them to finalize the plans they've been working on with staff in the last week. Staff does support this request, so we recommend deferral to the January 27th Planning Commission.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? You're about the only public left back there, you guys. No?
I would like to
Okay.
ask about the fact that site plans used to go in alphabetical order. We strategically did that.
Is there a presentation by the applicant? No? Okay. No presentation. So is there a motion then?
Recommend,
Deferral?
deferral to the
January
January
27th.
27th Planning Commission.
We have a motion recommending deferral to the January 27th meeting by Commissioner Harrison. And Commissioner McLemore seconds. Is there any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, by roll call vote. This is a motion to defer. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Franks?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison?
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Alderman Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson?
Aye.
And Commissioner Lindsay votes aye. That motion passes. Item number 15, the consideration of Resolution 2021-129, a resolution approving a revised development plan for Berry Farms Town Center PUD subdivision for the property located north of Goose Creek Bypass and east of Lewisburg Pike. Staff presentation.
Yes, thank you. So similar to what we saw last month, on this project, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen voted on the November 9th meeting to include additional conditions to the project supplied by the applicant that were not present for the Planning Commission vote. And so the item has to come back to the Planning Commission for an expert review of those conditions. The Planning Commission must vote to affirm or disagree with the change made, and only if the Planning Commission disagrees with the changes made by BOMA, then the item would go back to BOMA. If you affirm these additional conditions, it will be passed tonight. The conditions were attached to the item on your agenda, and they address concerns brought up by citizens at the Planning Commission meeting in regards to traffic and timing of roadway improvements. The applicant had worked with the citizens in between that meeting and the BOMA meeting, created a series of conditions that would be self-imposed upon them. Staff looked at those conditions. We had no objections to those conditions. And like I said, BOMA approved the plan with conditions. So the vote tonight for you is whether to affirm or disagree with this item.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item? Is there someone here from the applicant who wishes to make a presentation?
Good evening. My name is Gary Vogren, Kaiser Vogren Design, representing our client, Boyle. Thank you for reviewing this item. It's atypical that we come back to ask for additional conditions. Usually we try to clean these up and get these off as many as we can. So we look to the experts towards you to help us resolve this. But basically, we have these conditions already on the development plan went through BOMA. We are just adding these conditions in terms of timing more than anything for roadway improvements to accommodate what we already have in the PUD document. So just looking for those three conditions of timing for these improvements.
And these are accommodations requested by residents, people
Yes,
in the
the
area?
team worked with the existing residents, HOA, to work through improvements to traffic, exiting the site, internally to the site, just to work with them through this process. So we came up with these conditions to build these improvements, but didn't put timing to them, so these just clarify that timing when these could be done, just to help the community in general, working
Right.
with them.
Thank you, Mr. Vogren.
So we're here, happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Is there a motion on this item? We're looking for a motion to affirm the additional conditions added at the BOMA approval.
I move to affirm the conditions.
We have a motion to affirm by Commissioner Harrison and a second by Commissioner McLemore. Is there any further discussion on this item?
They were all appreciated by all sides
Thank you.
at the other
Yes,
meeting.
It was an effort.
Okay. Seeing no more discussion, by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore, Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson, Commissioner Williamson, and Commissioner Lindsay votes aye. That motion passes.
Thank you all.
Is there any other business before this board tonight? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Harrison and seconded by Commissioner McLemore. Y'all got a good thing going here. By roll call,
I'll be
Commissioner
here.
Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Harrison,
Aye.
McLemore,
It just-
Mann, Alderman Peterson, Williamson, Lindsay, aye, aye, aye. We are adjourned.